Hey there guys, this is Ali and today we are going to talk about API management in APIMatic. The first step for API management is to import an API specification file into APIMatic. Once the specification file has been imported, APIMatic automatically generates the developer portal as well as SDKs for multiple programming languages. So let's get started. Alright guys, so let's get started with the APIMatic import feature. First of all, you need an account on APIMatic. Go get signed up and then log in. Once you're logged in, you'll be at this dashboard. You'll be at a dashboard very similar to this. Press the import API button on the top right corner. Now you have two options. The first option is to import a file locally from your computer, and the other option is to get the file online. You just need to provide a URL to the file and we'll start importing it. But please note, the URL needs to be publicly accessible. It cannot have credentials on it. If it does, we won't be able to import it. I'm going to press the browse button here to select the file locally. We have this API specification file here. Press OK, and now we're going to press the import button. Now what happens is after you select the file, our validation summary shows up here. Validation summary is composed of two main things: errors and warnings. So errors are anything basically that prevents us from being able to generate SDKs against your API specification file or the online portal documentation. Errors will need to be fixed to be able to continue within the APIMatic workflow. While warnings are just soft warnings, so something like this is shown over here. They won't prevent or break the workflow, but because of this, we might not be able to provide some value-added features within the APIMatic ecosystem, like generating automated test cases, among other things, right? So through this, we were able to import an API. I'll just show you the other workflow as well. We're going to provide the pet store Swagger file here. We're going to press import, and after that, it's pretty similar to the other workflow as well. Alright people, so after successfully importing our APIs into the APIMatic dashboard, we're going to get these tiles here. So each tile is an individual API, and we're going to look at some additional settings that we can perform here. So to pull up the additional settings, we're going to press on these three dot icons here, and the first setting we're going to look at is called the import API as new version over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a new version, let's say version 1.8 over here, and then what we can do is we can select another API specification file. In this case, we'll select the calculator API specification file, and we can create version from API description file. So what this does is it'll import this new specification file and it will import it into the already existing API specification file we had here for the Swagger pet store. But what's the difference is that we'll have two versions now once we press on proceed, right? So we'll have a version 1.0.6, which was our old API, and then version 1.8. And we can then generate or do whatever we want with this. But one very important thing to note here is that your custom guides and portal settings like branding will not be carried over from your original API version to the new API that we just created. So this feature should only be used for API versioning, where your new version will have a completely separate set of custom guides and portal settings. And if you have a different API altogether, what we recommend is you just import it as a new API through the dashboard. Alright, so the next setting we're now going to look at is called the replace existing version setting. So this setting allows you to override the existing version with another API. Think of this like an in-place import where your existing API version gets replaced by a new version. So select the version you want to replace. In this case, we only have one version. We're going to select it, and then we're going to select the API specification file we want to replace this with. So in this case, let's select calculator, and then we're going to press import. So that has successfully been replaced now, and now we have our calculator API specification file instead of the Swagger pet store specification file. One thing to note is that your custom guides and portal settings like branding and font settings will be maintained in the newly replaced version of the API as well. So if you want to keep a single API version, you should use the replace existing version to import a newer version of your API, and it will update your portal while keeping all the custom guides and settings intact. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at another setting that we have here called fork API. So fork API lets you create a test version of the API in case you want to test some changes out or want version control for your API. So to do this, we're going to select the version we want to fork from, in our case 1.0.6, and we're going to give it a new version, let's say 1.2.3 in this case. Once we press proceed, it's going to start making that fork and it'll be successful. So what it does now is when you go to generate, you can see that we have two versions of the API. So what happens here is that all the custom guides and portal settings are persisted in the forked API, and this is particularly useful when you have a new API version that you want to maintain that you have a new API version and you also want to maintain the older version as well. So you would first fork your older API and create a copy of it, just like we did here, 1.0.6 and 1.2.3 here, and then use the replace existing version feature on the forked API to update the API version. This will ensure that both of your API versions are available while keeping all the custom guides and portal settings intact. Alright, so now that we've covered most of the features related to importing within the APIMatic dashboard, we just want to show you some additional cool things that we have here at APIMatic. And one of those features is the option to be able to merge two API specifications. So what you can do is you can have two different API specification files and you can merge them together and then have them be imported within the APIMatic dashboard as a single merged API. So this is we're going to show you how to do this. What you're going to do is you're going to have two directory folders, directory 1, directory 2, and each one is going to contain the respective API specification files, spec1, spec2, and they're going to be contained within another root directory called directory. You can name this whatever you would like for your convenience. And then at that root, you're going to have an APIMatic meta.json object. This object will contain these configuration settings here, and after that you just have to zip this folder and import it into the APIMatic ecosystem by pressing this button right here. It will look something like this. We have this folder that's already been configured, and you're just going to press open, you're going to press import, and it will be imported into the APIMatic dashboard. It's really as simple as that. Alright guys, so the last thing that we have to cover in this video is how to be able to delete an API. So deleting an API is a very simple and straightforward process. To delete an API, just press this red icon in the top right corner of any API that you want to delete. Well, I'm going to press it, and then it's going to bring up all of the versions that we have within that API. If you want to delete all of them, just press select all. It's going to delete all of the versions. If you want to delete any specific version, you can just go ahead and select that version. So we're just going to select all and delete all of them, pressing the delete button, confirm, and that should delete our API right over there. So as you can see, the API has been deleted and it's basically gone forever. So that's how the delete feature works in this in the APIMatic ecosystem or the APIMatic dashboard. And that's it guys, that was it for API management. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to APIMatic support and we'll always be happy to help you guys out. Thank you.